recording. Hello, my name is Joe Davey, and I'm here with Danny Garcia, and we're going to do his Veterans History Project interview. And Danny, I just have to start with a few biographical details for you.
Sure.
Where were you born?
I was born in New York City.
And who were your parents and their occupations?
My father's name was Jose or Joe Garcia, and he was a famous musician. In fact, he used to play with Xavier Cugat and many other artists like that. My mother's name is Margaret Garcia, and she was a IBM key puncher, and she was also a great mom.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have one sister who's still alive, and her name is Linda, and she's retired.
And whereabouts did you go to school, for primary school?
Well, primary school, I guess primary for me was grammar school, because I was being taught by the nuns. I went to a Catholic school, and I stayed there for 8 years, graduated, went on to high school, and ended up, I went to several high schools, but one of them was Eastern District High School, and I quit. I got bored in the 11th grade, and I left.
Okay. Can you tell us about when you went in the military?
Yes, sir. I went in May of 1962.
And were you drafted, or did you?
No, sir. The Marines watched me sometimes boxing because I was training for the Golden Gloves, and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I had 2 Marine Corps recruiters grab me. Next thing I know, I was heading for Paris Island.
How did you get to your initial point of entry?
How did I get to?
Bus. How did you get there? Too?
Oh, yeah, bus, cattle car.
What type of training or schooling did you have?
Well, in the Marine Corps, yeah, I obviously went to boot camp at Paris Island, South Carolina. I think it was 12 weeks of that, and then I went to advanced infantry training at Camp Geiger, and the training was everything to deal with war and killing.
Does any particular instructor stand out in your mind?
This is for all you DIs out there. I remember you. There's one in particular. I had Sergeant E5 Hendricks. He was a short drill instructor, really short, with the Smokey Bear hat on. I remember when I first introduction I met him, was standing tall in front of my barracks, in front of my rack when they threw the garbage cans around, and the next thing I know, everybody up, get out of your racks now, on the double. And next time I was awakened, I was shocked, and so he came by. As he was coming by the racks to inspect these recruits, us, he stumped me. He punched me right in the stomach, and I was shocked. And at the same time, the air went out, and I had to immediately snap to attention. I remember Sergeant Hendricks.
Okay, Danny, what was your first assignment after basic?
Well, I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. You know, I went to school, and then after school, I went to Camp Lejeune, and at Camp Lejeune, I was attached to several units. While I was in Camp Lejeune, I went to, I think I was with the 6th Marines for a little while, and then I was with 8 Battalion.
Well, why don't we move on to your wartime service? Could you tell us what kind of campaigns you participated in?
Well, it wasn't that long before I was in the Marine Corps. I was now 18 years old, and we immediately got a response that we had to get on a ship in Norfolk. And so all these Marines were loaded up on trucks, and they went to Norfolk, and when we got there, we went aboard this APA, which is a troop carrier where they have about 3,000 Marines. And we went on in and we went off, and I didn't know where we were going, and I didn't know where we were at when I even got there. But I ended up finding out well after that it was Cuba, and that was going to be the landing that we were going to make in Guantanamo during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Did you form any kinds of friendships and camaraderie with people that you served with?
Always, always. We were one. We were a team. We were a family. The Marine Corps. I mean, I went in at 17. They were closer than my own personal parents. We did everything together. We laughed together. We fought together. We did everything.
Did you have any combat experiences that changed you?
I think that what happened in Guantanamo was the beginning. I think what happened in Vietnam sealed it.
In what way did you?
Well, I was taken. I've seen a lot of my friends didn't make it back. I remember I was stationed in Corpus Christi, Texas at a Marine barracks. I was a brig officer. And I remember when Vietnam took off, they were calling infantrymen one by one from our unit, from our Marine barracks. At the barracks, we had to train not only for brig duty and supervising sentenced and unsentenced prisoners, but we also had to do our duties after the 8 hours, which was to do military tactics. So we had to be prepared all the time. But I found out, realized that guys' names were being called. Corporal Villalobos, Sergeant Eaglin. And I can remember them like if it was just yesterday. I can't forget. And so they were called and they went to Vietnam, and then 4 months later, they were killed. My judo instructor, Staff Sergeant Patton, he was shot and wounded, came back. He had kids, family, and he went back, and he was killed. And I used to have to deal with some of those services, and that I had to do the burial details, and some of those coffins were sealed because you couldn't visualize, you couldn't see those things that were missing. I was able to do that and see that.
Right. Do you have battlefield experiences yourself that you'd like to relate?
When I was stationed originally in Nam Phan, Thailand, but I ended up in Da Nang, sometimes in other places, and it's an area of my life that I really have had closed and put in a closet. I was dealing with a lot of different things with my job. I was in recon in the Marine Corps. I was in communications in the Marine Corps. I did a lot of different things. But when I was in Nam Phan, Thailand, my job was also to identify Marines that were under the influence of drugs, and they had to do a urine test before they went home. And if it came out positive, they couldn't go. I've realized and learned that there were Marines that were laced by smoking drugs with barbs, morphine, and amphetamines all in one joint. And so they were so messed up, they didn't know whether they were coming or going. I had to deal with that, plus my normal duties of being on, in a combat environment and dealing with other issues. I didn't know or realize how effective I was in what I was doing, because I ended up, and I had a reputation here in the States when I ended up coming back to the States. And then it went on, and I had a general in my class, and other people who I had to work with in teaching and implementing the Human Relations Program, which was under the auspices of Dr. Robert L. Humphrey, and was also initiated by later General Krulak, Commandant of the Marine Corps. I served with General Krulak when he was a major. And we were, as a team, we were very, very effective in stopping the drug problems and the racial problems that existed. This is something that I find that is not really ever talked about.
I know that the Vietnam conflict had a lot of draftees, and the training wasn't always the best when the people got over there, and there was a lot of racial tensions and drug. We heard about it, but we didn't really, any of us, experience it like you did.
It was very violent, sir. I wasn't dealing with people that were just using names or ethnic slogans. I was dealing with violence. And people were stabbing each other, and in fact, that was one of the incidents when I got into country there in Vietnam, in Nam Phuong. That was one of my introductions to the Vietnam theater, is seeing that in a mess hall, and then having to report to my CO, and then he threw the Human Relations Manual. He says, "You're going to teach it," and that was the beginning.
Did you feel like that was your calling, that doing that human resource?
I knew it was my calling then. I did not know it was my calling before then, because I was a infantryman. I was a radio operator. I stayed close to the action. My job was dealing with calling in missions on positions of the enemy, and I had seen things, and I had experienced things that were very painful. I did not know that it was affecting me. I didn't know it was affecting me. I had certain symptoms of, for instance, and I still do, of waking up every night in the middle of the night and my bed is soaking wet. Yeah. I'm drenched. My t-shirts I have to take off. Sometimes I wear 2 or 3 t-shirts a night to change. Even today. I am 76 years old and I still go. But I put that aside and just dealt with the mission. It was always mission oriented.
Were you out in the field for extended periods?
Yes, sir.
This time?
Yes, sir. Many times. For instance, in Cuba, I ended up going back to Cuba after the missile crisis, not on a vacation, but actually serving in Guantanamo, and I was in charge of the communications for the leeward side and the windward side, so that there was communication between both areas. And I had a team under me, and we stayed busy.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Yeah, I believe it was March of 1975.
Did you return home after service?
Yes, sir. I returned home, and
how was did your family receive you when you got home?
it was a time, yeah, they did, but there was a time because of the Vietnam conflict that there were a lot of people that were not ready or know how to receive, not just me, but us. It was a very painful and sensitive time, I'm sure, for them as well as for us. I don't think that people realize that have never been in the military what it's really like to be on the front lines, like the guys that are on the line right now.
How did you readjust to civilian life? Did you work or go back to school?
It was always for me mission first. And so while I was in the Marine Corps, by the way, I did get some college. I got 2 years of college at night. When I got out, I ended up working for Shell Oil Company. I started as a coding different kinds of keyboard messages and so forth, working for Shell. But they wanted me to do some graphics for them, and I did their graphics, and they loved it. So they sent me up to they promoted me, or asked me if I would be working in their public relations department. I said yes. I didn't know that the charts that I was creating was literally going to the public relations department, and from there to the president of Shell Oil Company, and then they were presented to the president of Royal Dutch. I didn't know that, but because of that, they invited me to come and be part of the human relation, to be part of the public relations program, and then I ended up going to Houston, and then I ended up leaving. It was very difficult for me to adjust to civilian life because of the discipline that I had learned and experienced in the Marine Corps. I didn't see any discipline out here. I felt like a ship, what is it, a fish out of water? But I kept trying to do my best. And my art director from Shell loved me. And he was like a mentor or father. And so I was very successful in Shell, but I ended up going back into the Marine Corps. And that was in 1968. And I stayed until 72, and that's when I ended up going to Nam Phong and Da Nang and other places.
How many years total were you in the Marine Corps?
Active duty recorded is 12 years active duty. I served in a lot of different places. I've been with a lot of different people. I've seen a lot of different things. I've learned a lot. I'm still involved today with Marine Corps activities.
I know you do a lot of community service work now that you got into after your military service. Would you like to tell us what you're involved in today?
Well, I'm a member of the Marine Corps League. In fact, here in Brevard, I was a chaplain in the Marine Corps League in Leesburg, Virginia. I work, I do everything I can with the Marine Corps activities or other communities. I've done things with UNICEF and Save the Children. All these are international organizations after I've gotten out. But I never lose, I always include two people in whatever I do, and that's God and the Marine Corps, because I know that.
I believe you're doing children's outreach work now. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, yes. It's funny you said children's outreach. The first thing that came to mind was my walking by foot around the world. In 1996, I gave up everything. In fact, it was December the 7th of 1996. I gave up everything. I flew to San Francisco and I started to walk from San Francisco, from Planet Hollywood, across the United States. And then eventually it tailed into around the world. I didn't know I was going to do that. I thought I was just going to walk from San Francisco to San Diego. And I reached a crisis in my walk where I literally almost got hit by cars. I didn't have any backup. I only had $48. I'd just gone through a divorce. I was a dead man walking. And I asked God, if you really are out there, if you really are God, I need you to give me life because I have no life. And so the first day I walked, that first day I remember, Marines heard I almost got hit by a car, or cars. And a unit from San Diego came out. They said, don't go anywhere, we're coming. And I said, what do you mean you're coming? We're coming to cover your back. 3 Humvees came, and they followed my back from Half Moon Bay, because I remember I walked 50 miles to Half Moon Bay. It was pouring rain. I was soaking wet. I didn't have any money to check in the hotel. And the owner of the hotel said, you're going to stay here free, and you're going to eat here. And then the Marines called shortly after that, and they said, we heard about your story. Don't go anywhere. We're coming. And they came. And they stayed with me. Marine Corps units stayed with me from that day at Half Moon Bay all the way across the United States. And I've had Marine Corps units, Royal Marines, Dutch Marines follow me even as I've traveled around the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful that the Marine Corps, your people stepped up for you when you had the need.
You see, sir, that we see that word Semper Fi or Semper Fidelis. We see it all over, but it's more than just words. There has to be passion and valor and purpose and all those things that you learned in boot camp that go with it. God, core, and country. That was our motto. God, core, and country. And that means that we were willing to give up our lives for those purposes, for those reasons. Even today. Today we have Marines on the front lines of different countries. And sometimes people forget. I don't forget.
Yeah, that kind of honor code that the military teaches is not taught to young people today. Would you have anything to say to today's youth?
I need your help. We need your help. It's time to wake up. You know, when you're a child, the Bible says you act like a child, but eventually you grow up and you become a man. I had to become a man as a kid growing up in Manhattan, in Spanish Harlem, because I lived in a very violent area. So I had to fight in order to survive. And so I went in the Marine Corps, and they just taught me how to fight even more so. But to fight for a reason, a positive reason. To serve, and to serve whether you're on the front lines or whether you're doing toys for tots, to serve. Isn't that what we do all the time? You got Marines right now that are short. There's only 200 and whatever thousand Marines in the Corps. But they not only have to do the duties that they do in harm's way, they have to do the duties here in the United States and in other countries. I see it all the time. They do deserve to be recognized. They're a small unit, but they hit hard and they hit fast, and they don't quit. We don't quit.
Well, Danny has served, it continues to serve even now at 76 years old now.
Yes, sir.
And we'd like to do another cameo appearance with Danny and his wife, and learn a little bit about the book that he's written, Marines Don't Cry. So why don't we conclude this section of the interview, and we'll be right back with you.
They may think she's a general.
Okay, let me introduce Lieutenant Colonel Jackie Garcia, who's the wife of Danny Garcia, and we'd like to tell you about their book that they're donating to us here at the Brevard Veterans Center, called Marines Don't Cry, and they collaborated on this book. Jackie's told us that she was the prime mover on this book with his help. So can you tell us, Jackie, can you tell us a little about the book?
Sure. Well, the reason that we're co-authors on this book is that Danny has lived every word of this book. So this book is about his life from being raised in Spanish Harlem up until the year 2000. So some of the things that he's mentioned in the interview are in this book. One of the things that is probably the most scariest is when he was taken hostage in Palestine by a mob of angry Palestinians. So we wrote about that in this book. And so this book, it's co-authored by us, but this is really about the life of Danny and how God was able to see him through many trials and tribulations in his healing. In the very end of the book, we made a very distinct decision to include something that we found out when we were writing about the book. And that was that Danny was formally diagnosed with PTSD. And if you read the book, you can see that some of the trauma that he experienced, why that would be the case. So we wrote that in the book, PTSD, so that we could help other, not just veterans, but family members and other folks who are dealing with PTSD, and they can hopefully receive hope from how Danny has dealt with it by walking and praying 52 million steps, 6 continents for children and world peace for over 25 years.
Well, that's wonderful. Danny, could you tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing and are about to do for your ministry?
Well, we're getting ready to go to Rome, Italy on the 15th of December. And our objective is to present a copy of our book to Pope Francis in the Vatican. And we will be there until January 5th. So we have all of that time to get in, try to get inside and present him with this gift so that he can share it with his congregation of, 1 billion people. So I did had the opportunity to meet in the past Pope John Paul II 4 times. And he helped me to make a presentation at the United Nations. I also had the opportunity of meeting people like Mother Teresa and what was his name? Muhammad Ali, Jackie Onassis, presidents and kings and world leaders like King Abdullah and Queen Rania and Jordan. So God has been very, very, very special in our lives. In fact, I realize even more today as a born-again Christian who has accepted Christ as his Lord and Savior and changed my whole life from doing concerts, for instance, at Woodstock, to many other things. God changed my life. And it wasn't, I had a lot of people stop me around the world and say, when are you going to write the book? Can I have your book? Can I buy it right now? Even if you haven't written it, I'll pay for it right now. And I kept trying to find somebody on 3 occasions who could write the book. Little did I know that it was right underneath my nose, really right next to me, which was my wife, Jackie. She had the military bearing and discipline, and she had experience in writing, but she'd never written a book before, not like this. She's never written a book. So it took us 5 years to write this book. She also had gone through some incidents herself, which were like hiccups that we experienced in our journey. She had breast cancer. So for a year, she was out of commission. Jackie is a hard charger. She is very squared away. She doesn't quit. She's a fighter. She goes from waking up in the morning early till going to bed sometimes at 1 o'clock every day, almost 7 days a week, in writing this book and doing our social media and getting ready to travel now to Rome. Our intention is not just to go to Rome, but to go on a world book tour with Morgan James as our publisher, to go around the world and meet with heads of countries, some that I've met before, some that I haven't, like the Queen of England. That's one of the other people that I would like to meet, and Prince Charles, and King Abdullah, and some of them have passed, like Nelson Mandela, a great man, and as obviously Muhammad Ali has passed. But we've met a lot of people. I've met a lot of people, and you know what? Everybody is really cool. They're really nice people. I mean, even the people who are not up in that high stature, just the regular people. I want to ask you a question out there. How does a man walk around the world and start with $48? And it's not just walked, sometimes 50 miles a day across the United States, but how do you do that and be able to get meet these people without any money? And yet everything is provided for you: airfare, food, lodging, and getting in to meet, for instance, Prime Minister Shamir of Israel. How do you do that? It takes, you know what it takes? It takes faith and acting on that faith. That may be one of the most important things that I can share in this interview. So everybody out there has a vision, maybe, and everybody else believes something. Yeah, but everybody doesn't always act on what they believe. It's very important to act on what you believe, otherwise it is dead. It doesn't go anywhere. You continue nurturing it for the rest of your life until you die. I chose, regardless of how dangerous it was, to go into the fire, because I knew that Jesus was there in the fire. To go into the fire and not be afraid, no matter what. And look what he's provided. Everything. My wife said to me today, "Honey, are we famous?" I don't know about famous. I know that I know God, and I love God, and I love my country, and I'm willing to give my life for God and my country if I have to. I'm out there on the point. I need your help. This book particularly is being used right now to help organizations and individuals that need funds. So many times in this, this book hasn't even been distributed yet, as far as the what do you call it, the publisher is concerned. On December 21st, it will be distributed all over the world. It will be in bookstores like Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all of that. But we were able to get a few of them.
Okay.
The money from this book is going to help the Brevard Center here, the Brevard Memorial Center here. So what we do is we tell them, just buy it at cost. And then they can sell it however they wish. The book costs $18, but we want the profit to go to charities.
Okay. Okay, we thank you very much for your interview today. And the Garcias are going to give us a book today that we'll have available in our library, and also it's for sale in our bookstore here in our museum at the Merritt Island Veterans Center. And with that concludes our interview today. We thank you again.
Thank you.